Good summary, and I would just like to expand on that a bit. And to do that, I have to go back a little ways in history. The former Yugoslavia was a federation that was cobbled together after World War I. The federation consisted of 6 republics, and within those republics there were 3 major religions and ethnic groups. Sometimes in the former Yugoslavia it gets a bit confusing because religions and ethnic groups can be interchangeable. So we have to realize it's a bit different than what we would consider religious and ethnic groups in the States. Anyway, after World War II, Marshal Tito emerged as a very strong leader, and for almost 40 years he managed to hold the country together and to ensure that no ethnic group really dominated the Federation. However, after Tito died in 1980, the economy was in shambles and there was a leadership vacuum. The republics broke apart and declared independence. Extreme nationalistic politicians entered the political arena, especially in Serbia and Croatia, and really exploited the situation. Slobodan Milosevic, who is the leader of Serbia, was really the most aggressive and ruthless. He seized complete control over the media in Serbia and began propaganda campaigns that created distrust and fear based solely on ethnic differences. He demanded a pure, ethnically and Serbia in a greater land area. In 1991, as a result of Milosevic's ambition and land grab, full-scale war broke out between the 3 republics, Bosnia, Serbia, and Croatia.
What took you to that part of the world, and why did you go back so often?
I first went to Yugoslavia in 1989 with my late husband, Eric Markuson, who is a university professor and whose research focused on genocide. While we were there, we saw the effects of the terrible inflation and learned from friends about the anxiety they were feeling because of a new emphasis on nationalism and ethnicity. During the war, we went back again to visit friends and for Eric's continued research. We also had jobs as reporters for a radio station in southwest Minnesota. And through those jobs, we were able to be certified by the UN as reporters and given press passes that enable us to travel throughout the region quite freely. I was also, after the war, privileged to be part of a project sponsored by Yale University. And the main goal of that project was to understand the process that takes place when people of different nationalities who've lived together for many years come to regard their neighbors as enemies. And my role in that project was to interview women and adolescents and find out what their lives were like before the war, during the war, and after the war.
Could you share one of those stories with us about one of the women or about the group called the Women in Black?
Yes, I'd be very pleased to do that, especially on International Women's Day. It seems so appropriate. During the war, while in Belgrade, which was the capital of Serbia, I met a woman named Sonja Pradanović. And Sonja is a remarkable woman. She is an architect. She happens to be a Croat married to a Serb. She introduced me to Women in Black. In 1999, their members began a public protest against the war and Milosevic's regime. Once a week, at noon, they dressed in black, left their homes and jobs, and gathered in Belgrade's main square, formed a line, and held signs that listed the estimated number of people killed by the regime and the paramilitary militias. They listed deaths from all sides of the conflict. I joined them a couple of times and really soon realized how tenacious and brave they were. During these silent protests, both men and women would come up to them, shout obscenities, call them traitors, threaten. They were even spit upon. Some of the women lost their jobs and became ostracized by their friends and families. They all risked a great deal for their beliefs. And Sonja, as a Croat living in Belgrade, really experienced a lot of discrimination during that time. However, she never stopped working for democracy. Even after she was marginalized by her profession, she found out that her phone was bugged, her house was wired, she received all sorts of ominous letters, but she continued. After the war, she was elected to her neighborhood council on the Democratic slate, and now she's retired and she continues to organize, write, and speak out about injustices and corruption that she sees around her.